the distinct pleasure of having Katie Gale here tonight, who is so precious. If you haven't met her, you need to know her. She's going to talk to us tonight about prayer. We all need prayer. We all need to pray for each other. Tonight, before we leave, I have the Maria Goretti prayer. Our bishop has asked us to pray that before she hits the road. She's on the road. She's got a road show. She's coming here Monday. So make sure you find yourself at the Cathedral on Monday. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, is this on, Brooke? I mean, I don't need it.
I need it. Yes, ma'am.
I feel very official, and I don't. Is it working? Do I need to move it?
It's for the video. No.
Okay.
It's just that it comes through.
Okay, cool. Okay, good. Okay. My name is Katie Gale. A lot of people think that that's a double name that I do. It's Katie Gale, and then I have a last name, but it's not. It's just Katie, and I married a man whose last name is Gale, so it's Katie Gale. We've been in Tyler for about 3 years in February. We have 5 kids, which I think is part of the reason why Eric asked me, because I think I look and behave pretty ridiculously, and so he thought, well, if she prays, then surely everybody else can pray. We have 2 big kids who are at Gorman, Nick and Jacob, and then I have a little kindergartner, Ellie, and then we have twins, Tommy and Olivia, who are 2. And I'm so ready for more kids, and my husband is telling me no. So I know, we'll see how that goes. I mean, I'm sure that's over. I tend to, as my sweet friends know, I tend to set a filter here, and I bust right through it, and I end up down here. So if I'm doing that, just say, Katie, we don't need to know any of that information. We thought we were talking about prayer, and now we're talking about something else, and so get back. When I talked to Eric, when we visited a little bit about what he wanted me to convey, he said, would you talk a little bit about how your life has evolved into getting to Tyler? I don't think it's exactly conventional. And then exactly what do you do? I think that some people want to know what to do, and not in any way, and I'm petrified in any way insulting. I know so many of you, and I know that so many of your lives are very busy, and your prayer life is probably mature and lively and wonderful. And so if there's anything that I say, I'll start to cry. If there's anything that I say that insults your intelligence or your practice, you just have to forgive me and tell Father Hank that it was terrible. And then that's great. But yeah, it's okay. And I'm so cool with that. But I'm so sorry if that happens. So I went to school, I went to college, Catholic University, got my master's degree, moved to Houston, had a really great life there, was single, with my own car, my own apartment, my own cat. My apartment was beautiful and clean all the time. I met a man at a Coke fountain, and it just all kind of went to hell pretty much after that. We got engaged in 3 months. We got married. We moved to Phoenix. I was pregnant within the year. We have Nick and Jacob, who are from Steve's first marriage. So people often say, oh my gosh, you look so good for having a senior. And I say, thank you so much. And I could have, technically, I did not. So Nick and Jacob, our hours, that's a different story over lots of cocktails. So Nick and Jacob, our hours from previous sexual experience of Steve's that happened years before me. And then we marry, we have Ellie, and then we have the twins in Tyler. I have the twins in Tyler. Steve did not have any twins. I had the twins. And so it kind of progressed, when I was single and I felt like I had more control over my life. I felt like I did more, and I'm really happy now that I did those things because I had the time. So I was an RCIA sponsor for several years. I taught Sunday school, I think, until I had Ellie. I had an adoration hour. I was dear friends with a priest that we went out a lot until it became taboo to spend private time with the priest, and so I couldn't do that anymore. But I did a lot. And then, like I said, I meet Steve, and it just everything messed up. We just got messed up. So we moved to Phoenix, and I knew no one. So we weren't quite married when we moved to Phoenix. We did live separately, in case you want to be specific. And we moved to Phoenix, we get married, and all of a sudden, I had gone from having a job and having a life and being Katie O'Banion to being Jacob's mom. When really I wasn't Jacob's mom, but I was Jacob's mom, but nobody in Phoenix knew that I wasn't really Jacob's mom, but I was, it was very confusing. And then Nick was a 5th grader, and he was, their mother lives in Tucson, and so that's several hours away from Phoenix, so she was kind of new back in their lives, and that was so fun, so fun. So that period of my life, I tend to think of my life in stages as single, and then married with children, because when we married, we had children, and then Tyler, because Tyler for us has been grounding, and we've I feel like we've hit a groove. I'm probably pregnant now and don't know it, and then the groove's going to be all shut off. But at the moment, tonight, like, we're good. We're so good, and we feel like, we kind of have it together, at least for the time being. So my life, I feel like, has gone from kind of an exterior activity to very interior, which is great. So now, because I can't do as much, I feel like I do more inside, and I feel like that's been a wisdom growth, and I hope a maturity growth. So, with all that said, I feel like we all are at this place where, especially as Americans and as, if I can say, as privileged American women, we tend, at least I don't mean to include you in this, but I tend to say, well, I'm just doing the best I can. I'm just doing the best I can. And I think sometimes that's okay to just do the best you can, but I think sometimes it's not okay. Just doing the best you can. And I think especially, and this is where this is why I do some of the things that I do, because I believe that the reason that we're here, right, is to go to heaven. That's the whole point. It's not to fit into a certain size jeans. It's not to be the cutest mom. It's not to be the best friend. It's not to be the best wife. This is it. It's to go to heaven. And the options after you die, the other option, I just do not like that option. And I'm not. It's very not funny to me. That is not an okay option. So I also feel like, again, as Americans, again, as privileged Americans maybe, everything else in our life is a choice. Everything, right? I mean, we could get up and leave our families if we wanted to. We have a car. We have a way to get there. It wouldn't be very nice, but you could do it. You can leave your spouse. You can leave your job. You can not love your children. You can, whatever, everything, there's always a choice. And I feel like with my eternal life, I do not have a choice. So if I feel like I do not have a choice, that I want to be with Jesus in heaven, and he has told us that in order to do that, we have to know him. Not just know about him, but we have to be intimate with him, then I have to pray. And that's it. That's just it. And so for me, the huge obligation that comes with that is actually quite freeing, because then I don't have a choice about whether or not I do it. So I just do it. So here's how kind of my life works. My husband works in healthcare, and to say he's not dependable is like this huge understatement. And that's been 1,500 fights about, you said you were doing that, and now you're not here, and whatever. So we just decided that Steve in a box is not dependable in any way. So he's over there. So because of that, and this time in my life, I can't do certain things that are consistent. Like, I can't have an adoration hour every week that I sign up for at the same time every single day, because there are some 5 a.m.s on Tuesday mornings that Steve is not home. And that's okay, that's just my life right now. So rather than looking at, these are the things I can't do, I try to think about it as, we're all trying to get to the same place, it's just not gonna look the same. But I do think, and that goes back to the obligation part, I do think that we have to do them. It may just not look like some other people's lives. But it doesn't mean that you go back to that expression, oh, I'm just doing the best I can. And therefore I never go to Mass, and I never go to confession, and I never go to adoration, but that's just all I can do. it's just not okay. Like, it's not okay for me to feel that way. So on a daily basis, and I pull my expectation bar like way down here, because if I set this is going to be my ideal week and my ideal day. I don't know about you, but I never hit my ideal. My marriage is not ideal. My kids aren't ideal. I'm not ideal. So if I said this is going to be my ideal, I just won't hit it. And then I'll go back to that was just the best I could do that day. And I want to know what is my best I can do, and I'm going to do that every day. So I get up every morning at about 5:30 every morning, and it stinks. And I don't like it, and I don't like it when my husband is still in bed and he says, "Why is your alarm going off?" I don't know. That's a great question. But I have the coffee pot set, so I hear it percolating. I'm like, oh, there it goes. There's coffee. I get up, and for some insane reason, Tommy and Olivia have decided to get up every morning with me, which is very sad. And they're not invited, but they don't know they're not invited. So I'm trying to work with that and be prayerful with them, but they're really like cramping my style. Because that time, and I sometimes only get 30 minutes, but that time is, I read usually, and I have these books I'll show you later if you care, but I don't pray, I don't come up with it myself. I'm not awake enough to do that. So I read, and I have the book set out on the dining room table, we don't have a dining room table, the kitchen table before I go to bed. So I get up, I get the coffee, I put the heavy whipping cream in it from my friend Jess, I do the little frother thing, I sit down and I open the book, and that's it. And I may get 5 minutes, but I've tried, and that part is the doing my best part. The getting out of bed, not an option. I get out of bed, and I read, I do that. Throughout the day, I tend to say all the time, I say Hail Marys all the time. Like I was telling Brooke the other day, I say Hail Marys pretty much when I'm supposed to be doing my Kegels, and I'm not doing the Kegels. I'm just saying the Hail Marys. So my Hail Mary is really good. My pelvic floor is not good, but my Hail Marys are good. But I think about it, I get in the grocery store line and I start saying Hail Marys. And then a light and I start saying Hail Marys. And for me, that's just a constant. I don't know that I can structure it well. I'm not sure that I can do that, but I can say them all the time. And so I do that a lot. I completely plagiarize this from a blog, so it's not my idea at all. I say two things also. And this can, I think, pertain to anybody. If you're not a mother, you don't have small children, but this expression, the Lord, I'm coming. And sometimes I say it out loud if I have to, but it's the person, it's your spouse, it's your child, it's your coworker, it's the person who needs you and you feel inconvenienced. And that happens to me all the time. And I think in my head, okay, that could be God. This could be Jesus. And okay, Lord, I'm coming. And it makes that. It could be a student, not one of mine. It could be a student, of my kids. It makes that inconvenience feel like it's holy in a way. You have to two things. I have to remember to say it, and you can't say it like, Lord, I'm coming. Because apparently I say it like that out loud because Olivia has said that, Lord, I'm coming too. Like, oh, no, it's Lord, I'm coming to you. So it doesn't always work. Again, I'm doing my best with that part, but to me that's really helped. It really helped me a lot when my babies were infants and getting up in the middle of the night all the time. And I would see Dawn at church and I knew that she had twins and I would think, she looks pleasant. She has on makeup. I think that she slept last night, maybe all freaking night. And so I am getting there. I know I'm getting there. And I would see her at Mass and she'd go, oh, y'all look so cute. And I'm like, no, we don't. We look terrible. But thank you for thinking that. So, Lord, I'm coming. And then, this is very helpful to me. I do this all the time, especially I find with my spouse, which is terrible. But the expression, Mary, be a mother to me now. And it's a very simple, I say it, and it's when I need a mother. And I need a mother right now. And I need the best mother, and I need someone to help me be a better, whatever, a better woman, a better wife, a better mother, a better person. But I need her right now, in traffic. I say it all the time. Oh my gosh, please help me. And I know that all of you do this. That's why I'm trying not to insult you in any way. But that expression about being a mother to me is amazing how peaceful it becomes. So I don't know that Steve knows I say it. He would probably say that I never say that, but I do. And he's lucky that I say it, because if I didn't say it, it would be uglier than it is. So I do that. And then I say the rosary every day. And I just do it. It's 15 minutes. It's not a big deal. I'm not always concentrating. I'm not always thinking about it. It's not always ideal. I'm not always touching the beads. I'm not always sitting in front of my picture of Mary. I'm not always sitting in front of a crucifix. I have it on my phone. It's an audio play. I plug it into my car and I listen to it. And sometimes I have to pause it to talk to the kid in the back. But I do it, and I feel like I can do that. I can't always sit down and do the beads, but I can listen to it in the car, and that's just how that works. And in the evening, we say, whoever happens to be sitting at the table, we say a decade of the rosary, and it's just the decade. And that became, we're going to do the rosary every night. We're saying the rosary. I don't care how much you hate it. I don't care how much you hate me after it. We're saying the whole thing because we're going to do it. It just did not work in my family. It just didn't work. I mean, the age gamut, Ellie was bossing people around because they weren't on the right beat, and Nick was irritated. I almost said pissed. Nick was irritated, though then I just did. Nick was irritated that Ellie was bossing him around, and then Jacob had fallen asleep. And it would just made me livid. And then that apparently was like a date night for Steve and me, so we'd go to the bedroom and I'd go, do you think that my clothes are coming off after that? No, it's not happening. So I was like, how about we do just a decade? And we'll just do a decade. And everybody can be in a good mood for 10 stinking Hail Marys. We're going to do it. So we do it. Every night, we sit down. I mean, at the dinner table, we sit down. I do not mean that irreverently at all. We sit down, we say the Our Father, we say the 10 Hail Marys, say Glory Be, and the Fatima prayer. And that's it. And we try to dedicate to somebody. If someone, it's usually Jacob, ironically, who will say, hey, I need to, can we offer this for someone? But if that doesn't happen, it's okay. So, but that we can do, and that is doable, and it works in our family right now. So that's my day. The week, I go to Mass. I try to go to daily Mass somewhere in there. That's really important. I feel like I can do that. We often go to the Gorman Mass, which is ridiculous. If any of you go, I'm so very sorry, Miss Bartley. So sorry, because we take up the entire cry room and people are looking at us and I think we're entertaining and we're not entertaining, and Tommy's pulling the curtains. But that's the best that I can, and I'm thinking, please God, give me points for this, because this is horrible. But Jacob and Nick like it that we're there, and whatever. Okay, so we try to do a daily Mass every week. There's a podcast that I know some of us listen to. It's Father John Riccardo. If you haven't found him, or I would just suggest any podcast. But Father John Riccardo is an active priest in Michigan. He is at Our Lady of Good Counsel, and everything, his homilies are on there. He has series, so you can listen to like series on prayer, series on sacrament, series on cradle Catholics. He's funny. He's kind of dry. He's kind of Christopher West-ish, I think. But I love him. Put him in the car. I do usually a podcast a week. When the babies were real tiny and I would walk our neighborhood, I would just listen to podcasts while they were screaming. And I would just, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I hate this. Never making babies again. So the podcast helped. And then also, something else that I pulled from a blog once was offering a day. I happen to have 5 children, so the days of the week work for me to have 1 day per kid. But I offer, and I've told my children until I die, this day is your day, always. So Monday is Nick, Tuesday is Jacob, it's very creative. Wednesday is Ellie, Tommy came first, so he's Thursday, and Olivia came last, she's Friday. Steve is Saturday, and then we have a general intention on Sunday. And it's every week, all the time. Like this morning I said, Jacob, I know you're gonna have an awesome day, it's your day. He's like, you always say that, Mom. I'm like, I know. And you can feel the love, I can tell, because you look really irritated. But that's just how it is. And I always tell them, expect good things. Expect great things on your day. This is your day. And then I try to, this doesn't work that great. Steve is just, if you knew Steve, my husband, he thinks all that's really great for me to do. And then he's like, yeah, I just really kind of forgot that was Olivia's day. And I'm like, how? It's Olivia's day every Friday. Did you pray for her when you were working and you blessed that patient? Did you also think of Olivia? No, Katie, never. That's great. So I hope that you die first so that the kids can have me. So, and that's a different topic because he's older than I am, which is a whole other thing. But yeah. So I try to tell our kids, that You can all do this. This is Nick's day for everybody. You don't get part of the day today. This is Nick's day. So pray for Nick. Think about Nick. And so that's really, I really like that. That's how our week looks. So if you don't have 5 kids yet, have more, fill up the week. If you do, add some over there. If you're Lori and you got to bump some people together, do that, whatever. And then for the month, it's month and it's / quarterly, because I have to be realistic. I have to work within my life, but I thought I was doing really great with reconciliation. Isn't that awesome? I have such pride in reconciliation. Until a priest told me recently, after I said, bless me, Father, for I've sinned. It was at my house. Bless me, Father, I've sinned. It's been this long since my confession. And at the end of the confession, he goes, well, Katie, number one thing, you need to be going more often. Oh. Well, I thought I was going more often. This looks good to me. And he's like, I mean, it's okay, but you need to be going more. Oh. Cool, okay. But how was the sin stuff, all the other stuff that we talked about? So I try to go, it's really hard for me to go to confession once a month. And it's just because of, again, the way my husband's job is and the way my children are. But I try. The times of confession are difficult. If a priest ever comes over for dinner, I always say, would you hear my confession while you're here? Can we get that in before we have dinner? Wow. Yeah, it's great. And they always, they're obligated to say yes because they're serving. So I ask it like I'm not sure they're going to say yes, but I say, oh, before supper, do you mind when you come over, Father, my shepherd, would you hear my confession? And he always says, I would love to. And he might be lying, but he always does. It's great.
I always offer before I even said anything. They're like, do you want to say a confession?
No, they don't ask me that. They don't get that vibe from me at all.
Yeah, I know. They get that vibe.
Yeah. So they hear the confession, usually in my bedroom where I have not made up my bed, which is horrible. I'm like, oh, why didn't I think of this? So, okay. So confession and adoration is something that I do not do enough. It's also limited to how I mentioned that before, but I, again, try to be reasonable and at the same time remember that I want to go to heaven and I have to go. So I go to adoration when I can. I like to not have anybody with me, especially Olivia, who is like a whole hot mess. I mean, it's just a disaster. So if I cannot have her, which means I can't have Tommy either, it just gets, this is why it's not every week. So it's a month, quarterly thing. Okay, so then kind of, I hope I'm saying this succinctly in an organized way. So then what do I try to do? So I had told Brooke and Eric before that in my mind, I try to think about God as this, if he's this vastness and he has this depth and that we cannot understand because we're just creatures, and we are trying to get out to him because he's in this depth, like an ocean, right? I'm an English major, I get that, right? Analogy, I can see it. And you're on this little paddleboard, right? And it's rickety and you're not very good at paddling because I'd be really bad at that. Jess would be awesome, I would be terrible. So you're paddling on this paddleboard and you keep tipping over, but you know where you're going and you get confused and you're not sure and you get turned around. But again, heaven, because I have to go to heaven, I want to go to heaven, I don't want to go to hell. Heaven's out there, I have to get to God who's deep out there. Then you're going to expect the troughs. You would expect it if you were paddling. It would not be shocking to hit a trough. So in your life, when I'm hitting a trough, you just have to paddle harder. And in the middle of the trough, sorry, Jess, but Jess and I had babies close together, and there were trough months, right, where you'd go, oh, this was a terrible decision to ever get married. This was a terrible decision to ever cooperate in God's plan and have children. I hate my life right now. I hate everything about it. But you just have to keep going. And I know we all know that, but I think in the middle of the trough, it's hard to remember that you have to keep going. So I try to think about God as my friend. And sometimes there's a little stop, look, and listen thing that I think about. It's like stop, drop, and roll, but it's not stop, drop, and roll, stop, look, and listen. And I tell my kids this, you have to do this with your friends. In this age of screens and technologies, and we're sitting there and everyone's on their phone and no one knows how to have a conversation. It's very concerning, obviously. You have to actually look at your friend. You have to square off. You have to stop what you're doing and look at your friend and listen to what they have to say. And you doing that is not looking at me, and I'm your friend. So put it down. I don't say it to my friends. Ironically, I say it to my kids. But so in the middle of the grocery store, in the middle of my life, sometimes I physically stop and I make my heart look. I imagine whatever best image I have of Jesus Christ, and I imagine him in front of me, and I just look. And even if I have two seconds, so that moment, the woman is writing a check for the groceries, and she's been in line for 45 stinking minutes, and she just gets her checkbook out, and I'm thinking, I am going to shoot you. Oh my gosh. Which is so lovely, I know. But I've got my buggy full of stuff, and this woman just pulls her checkbook out and she starts writing a check. And she asks where to write it to. Dude, the grocery store. We're in the grocery store. And sometimes I want to say, can I do that for you? Just let me do this for you. You know what? I'll pay for it. Here's my card. Go. Right there, I do. Just stop, look, and listen. Just right there for a minute. And again, of course, it's not shocking. It's very centering to just stop for a minute. So it reminds you of stop, drop, and roll. And then it makes me laugh when I think about that. Father Ricardo, who I mentioned in the podcast, he mentions this. I think it actually came from Archbishop Sheen originally, this analogy about people who are in the sun, S-U-N, the sun's presence, right? I'm sure some of you have heard this idea that they look a certain way when they're in the sun's presence. They act a certain way. They behave a certain way. They certainly appear a certain way when they're in the sun's presence. And we are called as Christians to look and appear and behave as if we have been living in the sun, right? S-O-N, the sun's presence. And people should know that we have been in the sun's presence. And so in order for people to know that, we have to actually be in it. So I think about, I'm so bad at analogies, it just runs my whole life, but I think about, like laying outside in the sun in those little, those plastic chairs, those plastic recliners, and then you could pop the little plastic pieces and play like a band on it, because I grew up with really nice pull chairs, can you tell? No pull, just the pull chairs. So you could play on it. So I imagine myself on one of those where your bottom kind of sinks in between the two that are loose and I'm lying on it. I do this in the grocery store line with the woman writing the check. And I'm lying there and I'm thinking, I'm in the sun, S-O-N. I'm in the sun's presence. I don't get to adoration as often as I want to. And how would I behave right now if I was in the sun's presence? I would not be thinking that I wanted to kill the person in front of me. So I have to change that now. But that sun, the stop, I always want to say drop one. Stop, look, and listen is very helpful to me. Like I said, the Hail Marys throughout the day, and I try to remember that the people in my life, this is a Mother Teresa idea, but that I'm called, we're all called, and it's funny, it's like that, you're obligated and you're doing the best you can thing again. It's not that this is a grace from one of the joyful mysteries. It's not that we're called to be loving to other people. We're actually called to have love for other people, of genuine love. And I don't remember where this came from either, but something about you get to heaven as long as you have a letter of recommendation from the poor. God will ask you for that. So how do I get a letter of recommendation from the poor if I'm not at St. Vincent de Paul, if I'm not at the soup kitchen? What do I do? And is Jacob, oh my gosh, 14-year-old boys, not fun. It's so not fun. They stink all the time. That is recorded. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Jacob. Sometimes I think about all these other people out here being the poor and being the people that I need to be loving to. And then Jacob walks in the kitchen like this morning, and it's Mass Day. Nick has been up 45 minutes. He's pressed his shirt. He's got his tie on. His pants are, he's not perfect at all, but he looks nice. And Jacob walks in his too tight, oh my gosh, he would shoot me, in his too tight boxer briefs, and he comes in there and he's like, oh, it's Mass Day, right? Yeah. It's 7:06-ish. He hasn't showered, he hasn't put on deodorant, he hasn't brushed his teeth, and so far, everything is okay. The 3 little kids are okay. We've had multiple meltdowns, but we're handling it right here under the sink. And when he walks in the kitchen like that, it makes the inside of my body go on fire. I feel like I'm gonna die. And then Steve calls at 11 and says, why are you in a bad mood? What is your problem? What could possibly be wrong with your life? And then of course that thing in my head, I'm like, did you want to have a date tonight? Because I mean, I hate to use my body, but I'm going to use it against you if you keep doing this to me. And so then I think this, Jacob is the poor right now. This is Jacob. And it's Tuesday. Of course it's Tuesday. It's Jacob's day. Of course it's Tuesday. He's walking in and I have to regroup. I have to regroup right now because I want to go to heaven. And that it just, for me, because I don't have the time to do some of these structured traditional activities, it's that daily little bitty things all the time, and which of course includes Steve, which is kind of unfortunate, but it just includes all that all the time, every day. And it's really tiny things, and they feel really insignificant, and you feel really unimportant. I feel really unimportant doing them, but then I remember that nobody else is doing them but me. And I remind Steve to keep up my life insurance, because if I die, he will need that money to hire somebody to do my job. Let me show. Okay, so these are these authors I really like, and you're welcome to pass these around. I'm sure you've heard of all of them. If you've never read Fulton Sheen, you have to read them like today. Like you have to read it right now. And it doesn't matter what book you pick. It doesn't matter. There are lots. This is The Life of Christ, and this is maybe my favorite book ever. It's, a light read, cool. The World's First Love apparently was his favorite book, and it's wonderful, beautiful. Obviously, it's about Mary, also one of my favorites. So these are some of those. If you've never read The Dolores Passion, which I'm sure you have, I'm sure I'm insulting everybody in this room. You have to read this book. You have to read it. I'll pass it. It's called The Dolores Passion. I read it during Lent, and apparently I was reading it. I timed it so I would read the scourging and the crowning and the crucifixion during Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Easter Sunday one year. I was really on top of it that year. I was really timing it well. And I was reading it after the Good Friday service, and I was in the adoration chapel. And this woman I don't even know who the woman is. I was mortified. Apparently I'm always mortified. This woman brought tissue up to me. I never even saw her. I was sobbing that hard reading it. This is what The Passion of the Christ, the movie, was based off of. These are visions. I don't know a lot about the background of the book. It was apparently seen by this nun that was recorded. So it's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. It's a real light read, this one right here, but it's very good. And you can skip through parts of it to read like the meaty, that's a terrible word to say, I'm sorry. To read this really good parts during Lent. That's so bad. Jesus Shock is also, this is a Peter Kreeft book, Jesus Shock. So good. Peter Kreeft also. Read Peter Kreeft, whatever. Yeah, the Catechism, I was going to reference that, but didn't get to that. Okay, these are these other ones. This is, Peter Kreeft. This is another Peter Kreeft book. This is a Peter Kreeft book, Prayer for Beginners. That it's just so good. I've read it probably 4 times. I have highlighting and markings all in it because I clearly consider myself a beginner, and I think I'll be a beginner until I die. So that's just not very good to think about, is it? It's so sad. It's not very encouraging. This book, Prayer for Beginners, actually references this book a lot, so I just bought this book. This is by Brother Lawrence, and it's called The Practice of the Presence of God. So good. Y'all read it? So good. This is like kind of what I was saying about this is just all that matters. You have to practice being in the presence of God all the time. So a quick read, but really, really good. Okay, so these 3 books have nothing to do with prayer, kind of. When Hell Was in Session by Senator Denton. Some of these are all by referenced by Father Ricardo from those podcasts. So if he says on a podcast, this is the best book, you have to read it right now, I go to Amazon and I order it and I read it because I want to read it. He was a Vietnam POW. It's a very quick read also. John McCain is in here a little bit with him. And it's kind of a Maximilian Kolbe-esque kind of feel. He thinks he's going to die. He's prepared to die. He's being tortured to die. And the faith and the beauty and the grace and the liveliness and simplicity of this man in this life is beautiful. There's one part that my sister and I kind of read at the same time, so we would call each other in the middle of the night and say, oh my gosh, have you gotten to this part? Oh my gosh. He's out, and of course they have to defecate in this little concrete, quad thing. And he's out there, and he's miserable and horrified and dying, and he says he's praying to Mary. He just wanted toilet paper. He's like, of all things right now, I would like to be able to wipe my bottom. I just don't want to be doing this without toilet paper. This is horrible, of all things. And these leaves, there are no trees, and the leaves fell from the sky for him to use as toilet paper. And that's just how just to me, the book, I'm like, okay, if this guy can keep up with what day it is, and he can celebrate Lent, and he can reverence things, then in my difficult life, according to Steve, I can definitely do it. Okay, the bronze bow. Yes? Do you love this, Fran? Yes. It's kind of elementary. Well, kind of. Yes? Yes? Yeah, the kids read it. Did they read it with you? They did, didn't they?
No.
They didn't?
One class might have, but I didn't teach that age group.
Oh yeah, because you were above them, right? Because it's that simple. It was on one of those like top 50 books that every boy has to read. And because when I married, I had boys, and I had never, as I reminded them all the time, never been a boy ever in my whole life. I didn't know what it was like to be a boy and have all those boy things going on. I bought, again, all the books on the list of what every boy should read, and this is on it, and it's a beautiful book. I made my boys read it. I didn't care that they didn't want to read it. It's a, what is it? Is it a Newbery Medal Award winner? It is from the perspective of a Jewish boy who meets Jesus, and I was crying at the end of it because I had never thought of Jesus as being just a man who people heard about, who was kind of a renegade. And these boys are figuring out, are they going to go? Are they not going to go? Are they going to lie to their parents and go see him? But he's kind of stinky, and I'm not really sure. It's beautiful. I would read it just by myself. Again, I have. But if you have boys, I would definitely read it. And then, you read this, Left to Tell. I mean, I don't know why I don't pick lighter books. This is just not a light book either. Left to Tell. And this, you want me to pass them around? Because I know you want all the books.
What was the name of the last one? Bronze?
The Bronze Bow. Jacob would really like this one. Here, just take it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and Amanda wins. Have y'all read this? Yes. Yes. Ilibagiza. Okay. She was a Rwandan. She's a victim of the Rwandan genocide, and you probably have heard the story. She was one of those 19, I think, women who hid in a bathroom for like 60 to 90 days. They hid in a bathroom, and I get chills. You can't put it down. It's an incredible testimony of faith. She learned to read English with the Bible so she could pray. It was very beautiful. She has the forgiveness of a saint, truly. She forgave everyone. Her entire family was murdered, and not just like murdered, but like really murdered. Everything was, not just kind of murdered, but like really murdered. Yes, butchered. Her beautiful brothers and her parents, everybody. And she forgave everyone instantly and is a beautiful person. So those are just fun reads, for lack of a better word. And then the other ones are obviously ones I use as resources. So I think my favorite quote ever, that's a really strong statement, but I think it is my favorite quote ever, is the famous Winston Churchill one with the 7 nevers. And the never, 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 never give up. And he apparently, very Winston-y, gave it at his alma mater, and that was his entire speech, was the sentence. But that's how I feel. Like you just can't give up. There's just too much at stake. So you, meaning me. I'll pass these around if this is helpful. I hope that was helpful, and again, I'm so sorry if this was so dumb. At least you got wine and cocktails, and don't have your children with you if you're trying to avoid them like I am. But thanks for coming. You're welcome. Do y'all want me to pass these around? I'll just leave them up here.
Well, somebody's already asked if we would make a list of these books, which we would
Oh, sure.
and send it out. So
Oh, yeah.
we can do the Katie Gale book
Oh, yeah.
club review.
Yeah.
Everybody enjoy your meal a little bit, and thank you.
You're welcome. No problem.
Awesome.
I did what?
You have water without you. Hey, I did. You want me to pull up a chair and you can sit for a second?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Do I turn this off?
I don't know. Let's just give it to them.